The morning I watched Karen Brennan stomp across my freshly plowed driveway at 7:15 in the morning, her face the color of a ripe tomato, I knew my peaceful winter day was about to go sideways. I had been running my snowplow service in Boulder, Colorado for 8 years, and in all that time, nobody had ever complained about me clearing driveways during a snowstorm. But Karen, the newly elected president of the Ridgemont Hills HOA, apparently had different ideas about how essential services should operate. I was sitting in the cab of my Ford F-350, sipping lukewarm coffee and preparing to move on to the next driveway when she planted herself directly in front of my truck. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful, and she wore a purple bathrobe over what appeared to be designer pajamas. The woman actually had the audacity to wave her arms at me like she was directing traffic at a major intersection. I rolled down my window, and the bitter January air rushed into the warm cab. "Morning, madam. Can I help you? You can help me by shutting off that monstrosity of a vehicle immediately," Karen shouted over the rumble of my diesel engine. "Do you have any idea what time it is? This is a residential neighborhood, and you're violating our noise ordinance." I glanced at my dashboard clock. 7:15. I had started plowing at 6:30, same as I did during every significant snowfall. We had gotten 14 inches overnight, and the storm was supposed to continue throughout the day. People needed to get to work, kids needed to get to school, and emergency vehicles needed clear roads. "Madam, I'm providing essential snow removal services. I've been doing this route for years, and I've never had a complaint. The city ordinance exempts essential services from noise restrictions during emergencies." Karen's eyes narrowed. She pulled out her phone, presumably to look something up, but her fingers were shaking so badly from the cold that she kept dropping it. "I don't care what the city says. The Ridgemont Hills HOA has its own set of rules, and those supersede any city ordinances. Our community noise ordinance clearly states that no loud machinery can be operated before 8 in the morning on weekdays." I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my patience. "With all due respect, madam, HOA rules don't override city emergency service exemptions. Snow removal is classified as an essential service, especially during active weather events. I have contracts with most of the homeowners in this neighborhood." "Well, you don't have a contract with me, and I'm the HOA president. If you don't cease this operation immediately, I'll have you cited for violating our community standards." This was going nowhere fast. I could see the curtains moving in several windows along the street. My other clients were probably wondering why I had stopped working. "Madam, I need to continue my route. People are depending on me to clear their driveways so they can get to work." Karen stepped closer to my truck, her slippers now completely soaked in the snow. "Those people should have considered that before they hired someone who has no respect for community quiet hours. I'm ordering you to leave this neighborhood immediately and not return until after 8 in the morning. If I see you here before that time, I'll call the police." I felt my jaw clench. "You go ahead and do that. I'm sure the Boulder Police Department will be thrilled to send an officer out here during a snowstorm to tell me I'm doing my job legally." Her face somehow managed to get even redder. "We'll see about that. I'm also calling an emergency HOA board meeting for tonight. By this time tomorrow, we'll have a specific ordinance banning early morning snow removal, and I'll make sure every contractor in Boulder knows that Ridgemont Hills is off limits to people like you. People like me." As if running a legitimate business and helping my neighbors made me some kind of criminal, I decided I had wasted enough time arguing. "Have a good day, madam. I suggest you get back inside before you catch pneumonia." I put the truck in gear and carefully maneuvered around her. She had to jump back to avoid getting her slippers even more soaked by the snow my tires kicked up. In my side mirror, I watched her storm back toward her house, phone pressed to her ear. I had a feeling this was far from over. My next stop was the Morrison residence, 3 houses down. Bill Morrison met me at his garage door with a grateful wave. He was already dressed for work in his suit and tie, looking harried. "Blake, thank God you're here. I've got a 7:30 meeting downtown and I thought I'd have to dig myself out." "No problem, Bill. That's what you pay me for." I positioned my truck and started clearing his driveway, the plow blade scraping against the concrete with its familiar metallic sound. Bill disappeared back into his house, probably to grab his briefcase and coffee. I had just finished his driveway when I saw the police cruiser pull up behind me. Great. Karen had actually followed through on her threat. I shut off the engine and climbed out of the cab as an officer approached. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with a no-nonsense expression that had probably been intensified by being called out for something this ridiculous. "Morning, officer. Let me guess, someone called about noise." The officer, whose name tag read Rodriguez, nodded. "I'm going to be straight with you. Got a call from a Karen Brennan claiming you're violating HOA noise ordinances and refusing to leave when asked. Want to tell me your side?" I pulled out my phone and showed him my contractor's license, my insurance information, and my client list for the neighborhood. I've been running this snow removal route for 8 years. I started at 6:30 this morning because we've got an active winter storm. My understanding is that essential services are exempt from noise ordinances during emergency situations. Officer Rodriguez scrolled through the information on my phone, then looked around at the snow-covered street. More was falling steadily, accumulating on his patrol car even as we spoke. "You're correct. Snow removal is classified as an essential service, and during active weather events, standard noise ordinances don't apply. HOA rules don't supersede municipal code when it comes to emergency services." That's what I tried to tell Mrs. Brennan, but she insisted I was breaking some kind of community rule. The officer sighed and handed my phone back. "Look, I'll go talk to her and explain the situation. You're well within your rights to continue your work, but between you and me, I document everything. Take pictures, save emails, keep records of all your communications. HOA presidents can make life difficult even when they're in the wrong. Appreciate the advice, officer." Rodriguez trudged through the snow toward Karen's house, which was 2 streets over and easily identifiable by the elaborate holiday decorations. She still had up, even though it was mid-January. I climbed back into my truck and continued my route, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that this was just the beginning of something bigger. By 9 o'clock, I had finished most of my Ridgemont Hills contracts. The snow was still coming down hard, and the Weather Service had upgraded the storm warning. This was shaping up to be one of the worst winter storms Boulder had seen in years. My phone had been ringing constantly with new requests for plowing services from people who didn't have contracts, but were desperate to get their driveways cleared. I was eating a quick breakfast sandwich between jobs when my phone rang again. This time it was my lawyer, Patricia Hayes. We had been friends since college, and she occasionally helped me with business matters. "Blake, I just got the strangest call. Some woman named Karen Brennan is threatening to sue you for harassment and violation of community standards." I nearly choked on my sandwich. "She's what?" "Patricia, I've been plowing snow. That's literally all I've done. She came out this morning and demanded I stop working because of some HOA noise rule." "Well, she's claiming you deliberately harassed her by continuing to work after she explicitly told you to stop. She's also saying you endangered her by driving recklessly near her on a public street, And get this, she wants to pursue an injunction preventing you from operating your business in her neighborhood. This was insane. Patricia, I have contracts with probably 30 homeowners in Ridgemont Hills. I can't just abandon them because one person has decided I'm public enemy number one. I know. That's why I'm calling. Don't communicate with her directly anymore. Forward me any emails, texts, or messages she sends. Document everything you do in that neighborhood. Time stamps, photos, the works. If she wants to play hardball, we need to be prepared. After I hung up with Patricia, I sat in my truck for a few minutes, watching the snow accumulate on my windshield. I had built my business from nothing, working 18-hour days in the beginning, slowly building up a client base through good work and fair prices. I wasn't about to let some power-hungry HOA president destroy what I had spent years creating. The rest of the day passed in a blur of driveways, parking lots, and commercial properties. By the time I got home at 8 that evening, I was exhausted. My back ached from 12 hours of sitting in the truck, and my shoulders were sore from manning the plow controls. But I still had paperwork to do. I lived in a small house in North Boulder, outside any HOA jurisdiction. Thank God. It was nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom ranch with a garage big enough for my truck and equipment. But it was mine, paid for with honest work. I made myself dinner, took a hot shower, and settled in at my computer to document everything that had happened that morning. My phone buzzed with a text from Bill Morrison. "Blake, heads up. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting for tonight. She's trying to pass a new rule banning commercial vehicles from operating before 8 a.m. Several of us are pushing back, but she's got some supporters. Thought you should know." I thanked him for the information and continued typing up my account of the morning's events. I included the exact time I arrived in the neighborhood, the time Karen confronted me, the time Officer Rodriguez arrived, and the time I left. I took screenshots of all my contracts with Ridgemont Hills residents and downloaded the relevant sections of Boulder's municipal code regarding essential services and noise exemptions around 9:30. My phone rang. It was Susan Palmer, another one of my Ridgemont Hills clients. "Blake, the meeting just ended. It was absolutely wild. Karen tried to ram through this new ordinance, but a bunch of us voted it down. She was furious. She actually said she'd find another way to get rid of you." "Get rid of me, Susan? What exactly did she say?" "She said that you were a menace to the community, and that she'd do whatever it took to protect the neighborhood from, and I quote, aggressive contractors who think they are above the rules." Blake, I'm worried. She seemed really unhinged. Several people tried to explain that we need snow removal services, especially during storms like this, but she wouldn't listen. Did she say anything specific about what she plans to do? Not exactly. But she did mention something about filing complaints with the city, your insurance company, and the Better Business Bureau. She also said she was going to make sure every homeowner in Ridgemont Hills knew what kind of person they were dealing with. This was escalating quickly. After I hung up with Susan, I called Patricia again and filled her in on the HOA meeting. She listened carefully, asked a few questions, then said, "Blake, I think we need to be proactive here. First thing tomorrow, I'm going to draft a cease and desist letter. If she's threatening to file false complaints and defame your business, we need to put her on notice that there will be consequences." Will that just make things worse? Maybe. But it also creates a paper trail showing that we tried to resolve this professionally. If she continues, we'll have evidence of her pattern of behavior. The next morning, I woke up to 18 inches of fresh snow and a voicemail from Karen Brennan. I hadn't even given her my number, which meant she must have gotten it from somewhere else. Her voice was syrupy sweet, completely different from the angry woman I had encountered the previous morning. "Mr. Thompson, this is Karen Brennan, president of the Ridgemont Hills HOA. I wanted to reach out and see if we could come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. I understand you have contracts with several homeowners in our community, and I'd like to propose a compromise. If you could agree to start your snow removal services no earlier than 7:30 on weekdays and 8 on weekends, I think we could avoid any further conflicts. Please call me back at your earliest convenience to discuss." I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Patricia before calling her. She left me a message pretending to be reasonable. "What do you think?" "I think she's creating a record that makes her look like the reasonable party trying to compromise while you're the difficult contractor. Don't respond yet. Let me send the cease and desist first, then we'll see how she reacts." I spent the day plowing, starting my Ridgemont Hills route at 6:30 just like always. Several of my clients came out to express their support and to apologize for Karen's behavior. The general consensus was that she had gotten a little bit of power and it had gone straight to her head. She had only been elected HOA president 2 months ago, and already she was alienating half the neighborhood. Around 10 that morning, I was clearing the driveway of Margaret Newton, a retired teacher who had lived in Ridgemont Hills for 30 years. She invited me in for coffee, and I gratefully accepted. My hands were numb despite my gloves, and the cab heater could only do so much. Margaret's kitchen was warm and smelled like fresh baked cookies. She poured me a large mug of coffee and pushed a plate of chocolate chip cookies across the table. "Blake, I want you to know that a group of us are working to recall Karen from the board. This isn't just about you and your snow plowing. She's been a nightmare since the day she was elected." "What do you mean?" "She's been sending violation notices left and right for the pettiest things. My neighbor got cited because her mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Another family got fined because their kid left a bike in the front yard overnight. She's conducting these so-called inspections of people's properties and finding fault with everything. The snowplow incident was just the last straw for a lot of people. How long does a recall take? That's the problem. According to our HOA bylaws, we need signatures from 60% of homeowners to trigger a recall vote. Then there has to be a 30-day notice period before the vote can take place. And even if we succeed, Karen could do a lot of damage in the meantime." I finished my coffee and thanked Margaret for her hospitality. As I climbed back into my truck, I noticed a silver Mercedes parked across the street. Karen was sitting in the driver's seat, staring at me. When she saw me looking, she held up her phone like she was taking pictures. I waved at her and continued with my work. That afternoon, I received an email from the city of Boulder. Someone had filed a complaint against my business, claiming I was operating without proper permits and insurance. The complaint was anonymous, but I had a pretty good idea who had filed it. I immediately contacted Patricia and forwarded her the email. "This is harassment," Patricia said when she called me back. "You have all your permits and insurance. This is clearly a malicious complaint designed to waste your time and damage your business. I'm escalating this. We're not just sending a cease and desist anymore. We're filing a harassment claim and potentially pursuing a restraining order." Will that actually work? It depends on whether we can prove a pattern of behavior. But between the confrontation, the voicemail, the HOA meeting, and now the false complaint, I think we have a solid case. The next few days were a blur. The storm had finally passed, leaving Boulder under nearly 2 feet of snow. I was working 16-hour days trying to keep up with all the plowing requests. But every time I entered Ridgemont Hills, there was Karen, either in her car or standing outside, watching me work and taking pictures. On Thursday, 3 days after our initial confrontation, I arrived at the driveway of Tom and Jennifer Santiago. They were both doctors who worked at Boulder Community Health, and they paid me extra to prioritize their driveway since they had erratic emergency shifts. I was halfway through clearing their driveway when Karen's Mercedes pulled up and blocked my exit. She got out of her car, this time dressed in an expensive-looking winter coat and boots. "Mr. Thompson, I need to speak with you immediately." I stayed in my truck and rolled down the window. "Madam, my lawyer has advised me not to communicate with you directly. If you have concerns, please contact her office." "Your lawyer? Are you seriously hiding behind a lawyer because you can't follow simple community rules? I'm trying to be reasonable here. All I'm asking is that you respect our quiet hours. And I'm trying to do my job. I've explained multiple times that snow removal is an essential service exempt from noise ordinances. I have contracts with residents of this neighborhood, and I intend to fulfill them." Karen's pleasant facade cracked. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, you should know that I've contacted every single one of your clients in this neighborhood. I've explained to them that by continuing to employ you, they're complicit in violating HOA rules. I've offered to arrange alternative snow removal services through a contractor who is willing to respect our community standards." I felt my stomach drop. "You can't do that. Those are private contracts between me and the homeowners." "Oh, but I can, and I am. In fact, I've already convinced 3 families to switch to someone else. By the end of the week, you won't have a single client left in Ridgemont Hills, and then maybe you'll learn that actions have consequences." She got back in her Mercedes and drove away, leaving me sitting there in shock. I immediately started making calls to my clients. The first 2 assured me they had no intention of switching contractors, but the 3rd call went to voicemail. So did the 4th and 5th. That evening, I met with Patricia at her office. She listened to my account of the confrontation and shook her head in disbelief. "This has crossed the line from harassment into tortious interference with business relationships. She's actively trying to destroy your livelihood. We're filing for a restraining order tomorrow morning, and we're including a civil suit for damages." "Patricia, I don't want to sue anyone. I just want to do my job in peace." "I understand that. But Blake, she's not going to stop. She's escalating. Today it's your clients. Tomorrow it could be something worse. We need to protect your business and establish legal boundaries before this gets completely out of hand." The next morning, Friday, I received a certified letter from the Ridgemont Hills HOA. It was a formal notice that I was banned from entering the neighborhood for any reason. The letter claimed I had been designated as a disruptive contractor, and that my presence constituted a threat to the peace and tranquility of the community. It was signed by Karen Brennan and 2 other board members I had never heard of. I photographed the letter and sent it to Patricia. She called me back within 5 minutes. "They can't do this. They have no legal authority to ban you from a public street or from fulfilling private contracts with homeowners. This is absolutely insane. I'm filing our restraining order petition this afternoon, and I'm including this letter as evidence of harassment." Despite the ban, I continued my route that morning. I had a legal right to be there, and I wasn't going to let empty threats stop me from working. But when I arrived in Ridgemont Hills, I found that someone had called the police again. This time it was Officer Martinez, a woman in her 40s who looked like she had heard enough nonsense for 1 week. "Mr. Thompson, we need to stop meeting like this. Let me guess, Karen Brennan called about you again." "I assume so. Did she tell you I've been banned from the neighborhood?" Officer Martinez pulled out her notepad. "She did. She also claims you're trespassing and harassing residents. I explained to her again that the HOA doesn't have the authority to ban contractors from public streets or from fulfilling legal contracts. She then threatened to file a complaint against me for not doing my job. She paused and looked at me. I ran your information. You've got a clean record, proper licensing, and I've got dispatch logs showing you've never had a complaint until this week. What the hell did you do to make this woman so angry? I plowed snow at 7 in the morning. That's it. No previous history, no personal conflict, nothing else. That's it. She's the new HOA president, and apparently she's decided that I'm violating some noise rule. I've tried to explain that essential services are exempt, but she won't listen. Officer Martinez closed her notepad. For what it's worth, I think you're dealing with someone who's got some serious control issues. My advice: get a lawyer if you don't already have one, and consider filing a restraining order. The department has dealt with her before. She calls us constantly about the most trivial things. Last month it was about someone's Christmas lights being up too late. After Officer Martinez left, I continued my work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. That feeling proved correct around 11 that morning when I arrived at the Chen family's house. Their driveway had been blocked with orange traffic cones, and there was a sign that read, "No unauthorized contractors." Mrs. Chen came running out of her house, still in her bathrobe. "Blake, I'm so sorry. Karen came by this morning and put those cones there. She said if we let you plow our driveway, we'd be fined $500 for violation of HOA rules. My husband is furious, but we can't afford that kind of fine right now. We have a new baby and medical bills, and everything is just so expensive." I felt terrible for her. "Mrs. Chen, those fines aren't legal. The HOA can't penalize you for hiring a licensed contractor." "Maybe not, but it would still take time and money to fight it, and we just don't have either right now. I'm so sorry, Blake. You've been wonderful to us, and this isn't fair to you at all." I helped Mrs. Chen move the cones and cleared her driveway anyway. She tried to pay me, but I refused. This wasn't her fault, and I wasn't going to make her life harder. As I was finishing up, Karen's Mercedes appeared again. This time she didn't get out. She just sat there, phone in hand, recording everything. That afternoon, Patricia called with an update. The court granted us a temporary restraining order hearing for Monday morning. In the meantime, I've sent Karen a formal letter outlining all the laws she's breaking and warning her that continued interference will result in serious legal consequences. I also filed a complaint with the Colorado Real Estate Commission about her behavior as HOA president. What will that do? Probably nothing immediately, but it creates another paper trail. If enough complaints pile up, they might investigate the HOA's practices. Colorado has pretty strict laws about HOA conduct, and she's violating most of them. The weekend was relatively quiet. I caught up on my other clients, did some maintenance on my truck, and tried not to think about the hearing on Monday. But Sunday evening, I received a series of text messages from various Ridgemont Hills residents. Karen had sent out a mass email to everyone in the neighborhood, claiming that I was an unlicensed contractor who had been harassing residents and violating community standards. The email included several photos of me working, taken from angles that made it look like I was doing something suspicious. The email also claimed that I had threatened Karen personally, and that she had been forced to obtain a restraining order against me for her own safety. This was completely backwards from reality, but the email was written in such a way that made her sound like a victim and me like a dangerous criminal. I forwarded everything to Patricia, who was now working on Sunday evening to prepare for tomorrow's hearing. This is defamation, plain and simple. She's published false statements about you that are damaging your reputation and your business. We're adding this to our complaint. Blake, I want you to start keeping a log of any clients you lose, any income you lose, anything that can be quantified as damages. If we win this case, and I think we will, you're entitled to compensation. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I put on my best suit, the one I kept for weddings and funerals, and met Patricia at the Boulder County Courthouse. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 9, and Patricia had warned me that Karen would probably have her own lawyer. She did. A man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Richard Sterling walked up to us in the hallway outside the courtroom. Patricia Hayes. I represent Mrs. Brennan in this matter. I understand you're seeking a restraining order against my client. I have to say, I've reviewed the facts of this case, and it seems like you're the aggressors here. Patricia smiled coolly. Richard, your client has engaged in a sustained campaign of harassment against my client, including making false complaints to government agencies, interfering with his business relationships, and publishing defamatory statements about him. I don't know what she told you, but I suggest you review the evidence we've prepared. She handed him a thick folder. Richard flipped through it, his expression growing more concerned with each page. I'll need to speak with my client. The hearing itself was brief but intense. The judge, a woman named Jennifer Morrison, listened carefully as Patricia laid out our case. She presented the timeline of events, the documentation I had collected, the voicemail from Karen, the email to the neighborhood, and statements from residents who had witnessed Karen's behavior. Richard tried to argue that Karen was simply trying to enforce HOA rules and that I was being oversensitive. But when Judge Morrison asked him to cite the specific rules I had violated, he couldn't. The HOA bylaws he presented clearly showed that noise ordinances had an exemption for essential services, just like the city code. Then Judge Morrison asked Karen directly, Mrs. Brennan, why did you think you had the authority to ban Mr. Thompson from the neighborhood? Karen, wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, looked nothing like the angry woman who had confronted me in the snow. Your Honor, I was simply trying to protect my neighbors from unreasonable noise at early morning hours. Mr. Thompson refused to compromise or work with us to find a solution that respected everyone's needs. Mrs. Brennan, did you contact Mr. Thompson's clients directly to encourage them to fire him? I merely provided them with alternative options, Your Honor. I felt it was my duty as HOA president to ensure they had access to contractors who would follow our community guidelines. Judge Morrison looked at Patricia. Do you have evidence of this? Patricia presented screenshots of text messages from my clients, showing Karen's direct outreach and the pressure she had applied. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. Mrs. Brennan, interfering with existing business contracts is a serious matter. Beyond that, you've made false complaints to city agencies, published defamatory statements, and created a hostile environment for Mr. Thompson simply because he was doing his job legally. I'm granting the restraining order. You are prohibited from contacting Mr. Thompson directly or indirectly, from interfering with his business relationships, and from making any public statements about him or his business. Do you understand? Karen's face went white. Your Honor, I'm the president of a homeowners association. How am I supposed to do my job if I can't communicate about contractors working in our neighborhood? You can communicate facts, Mrs. Brennan. You cannot make false statements, and you cannot interfere with legal contracts between homeowners and contractors they choose to hire. If you have legitimate concerns about a contractor, you can file appropriate complaints through proper channels. But what you've been doing goes far beyond that. This restraining order will remain in effect for 1 year, and if you violate it, you'll face criminal penalties. We walked out of the courtroom and I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a week. Patricia was grinning. That went better than I expected. Judge Morrison clearly saw through her victim act, but our relief was short-lived. That afternoon, I received a call from Tom Santiago, one of my doctor clients in Ridgemont Hills. "Blake, you need to know something. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting for tonight. She's claiming that you got a restraining order against her as part of a campaign to intimidate the board. She's trying to get the HOA itself to ban you from the neighborhood. Can she do that after the judge's order? I don't know, but she's sure going to try. Several of us are planning to attend and push back, but I wanted to warn you." I called Patricia immediately. She listened to my summary of Tom's call and sighed. "She's not going to let this go, is she? Okay, here's what we do. I'm going to attend that HOA meeting as your representative. If she tries to pass any rules targeting you specifically, that's retaliation and violation of the restraining order. Let her dig her own grave." That evening, Patricia attended the HOA meeting while I waited at home, too anxious to do anything productive. She called me around 9:30. "Blake, you're not going to believe this. Karen tried to pass an emergency rule banning all commercial snow removal services from operating before 8 in the morning. But here's where it gets interesting." One of the board members, a man named David Foster, stood up and said he had consulted with an attorney who told him that such a rule would be illegal and would expose the HOA to liability. Karen lost her temper, and I mean really lost it. What happened? She started yelling at David, calling him a traitor and accusing him of being in your pocket. Then she turned on the residents who had hired you, saying they were destroying the neighborhood and that she wouldn't rest until every single one of them regretted crossing her. Blake, she said this in front of 50 people. It was unhinged. Several people walked out and the meeting ended with calls for her resignation. So no new rules, no new rules. But more importantly, I recorded the whole thing on my phone. Her statements constitute evidence of continued harassment and violation of the restraining order. I'm filing a motion tomorrow to hold her in contempt of court. Tuesday morning, I was back at work, plowing driveways in Ridgemont Hills like nothing had happened. Several residents came out to thank me and apologize for Karen's behavior. The general mood in the neighborhood was one of embarrassment mixed with anger. Many people felt that Karen had made them all look bad and had wasted everyone's time with her personal vendetta. Around 10 in the morning, I saw Karen's Mercedes drive past me slowly. She was on her phone, and even from a distance, I could see that she was agitated. 20 minutes later, Officer Rodriguez pulled up next to my truck. "Mr. Thompson, I heard about the restraining order. Good for you. But I wanted to give you a heads up. Mrs. Brennan just filed another complaint claiming you violated the restraining order by working in her neighborhood. I explained to her that the order doesn't prohibit you from doing your job. It prohibits her from interfering with you." She did not take that well. What did she say? Let's just say she used some language that wasn't appropriate for a conversation with law enforcement. I suggested she contact her lawyer. Between you and me, I think she's having some kind of breakdown. In my 15 years on the force, I've never seen someone so obsessed with something so trivial. Officer Rodriguez was right. Over the next few days, Karen's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started following me in her car as I worked, maintaining just enough distance to claim she wasn't violating the restraining order. She posted in neighborhood social media groups, making vague accusations about dangerous contractors and corrupt legal systems. And she began showing up at city council meetings, demanding changes to municipal code that would give HOAs more power over contractors. Patricia filed the contempt motion, and we got a hearing date for the following Monday. In the meantime, the recall effort against Karen was gaining momentum. Margaret Newton and several other long-time residents had collected enough signatures to trigger a vote, which was scheduled for late February, but Karen wasn't done. On Thursday evening, I received a call from Jennifer Santiago. She was crying. "Blake, someone vandalized our driveway. They spray-painted Trader across it in red paint, and they slashed our tires, all 4 of them." I felt sick. "Did you call the police? They're here now." "Blake, I know it was Karen. She's been glaring at us every time she drives by. Tom confronted her yesterday about her behavior, and she told him he would regret it. This is insane. We're talking about snow plowing, and now someone is vandalizing our property." The police investigated, but there was no direct evidence linking Karen to the vandalism. However, 2 other families who had spoken out in support of me at HOA meetings also reported minor vandalism over the next few days. A mailbox knocked over here, some garbage scattered in a yard there. Nothing that could be definitively proved, but the pattern was clear. At the contempt hearing on Monday, Judge Morrison was not pleased. Patricia presented evidence of Karen's continued harassment, including the social media posts, the false police reports, and testimony from residents about the hostile environment she had created. The judge listened carefully, her expression growing darker. "Mrs. Brennan, you've violated every aspect of the restraining order. You've made public statements about Mr. Thompson. You've attempted to interfere with his business through HOA meetings, and you've filed false complaints with law enforcement. I'm finding you in contempt of court. You're fined $2,000, and I'm ordering you to complete anger management counseling. If you violate this order again, you will face criminal charges. Do you understand?" Karen stood up, ignoring her lawyer's attempts to keep her seated. "Your Honor, this is a miscarriage of justice. I'm being punished for trying to protect my neighborhood from a man who has no respect for our community standards. Mr. Thompson has turned residents against me. He's destroyed the harmony of our neighborhood, and now you're fining me for standing up for what's right. This is wrong, and I won't stand for it." Judge Morrison's voice was ice cold. "Mrs. Brennan, you need to sit down and be quiet, or I will hold you in contempt again right now. Your characterization of events is not supported by the evidence. Mr. Thompson has done nothing but his job. You are the one who has created conflict and chaos. Now sit down." Karen sat, but her face was bright red and I could see her hands shaking. As we left the courtroom, Richard Sterling pulled Patricia aside. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Patricia's expression was grim. When she came back to me, she said, "Richard is trying to negotiate a settlement. He says Karen will agree to leave you alone completely if you drop any further legal action against her. What do you think?" "I think she's not going to leave you alone regardless of what she agrees to. But it might be worth considering if only to end this nightmare. However, I'd want the settlement to include her resignation from the HOA board." That evening, I met with several of my Ridgemont Hills clients to discuss the situation. The consensus was that they wanted Karen gone from the HOA board entirely. They had lost faith in her ability to lead the community, and they felt that her obsession with me had distracted from actual neighborhood issues that needed attention. There are potholes that need fixing, street lights that are out, and a drainage problem on Cedar Street that floods every time it rains, Bill Morrison said. But instead of addressing any of that, Karen has spent the last 2 weeks on a crusade against you. It's embarrassing, and it's hurting our property values. People are afraid to move into a neighborhood with this kind of dysfunction. The recall vote was scheduled for February 28th, and Karen spent the weeks leading up to it campaigning to keep her position. She sent out multiple emails to residents, held coffee meetings at her house, and posted constantly on social media about her vision for the neighborhood. But she never mentioned me directly, presumably because she was afraid of violating the restraining order again. Meanwhile, my business was slowly recovering. Most of my Ridgemont Hills clients had stuck with me, and several new clients from other neighborhoods had hired me specifically because they had heard about my situation and wanted to support a small business owner standing up to HOA overreach. On February 27th, the day before the recall vote, I received a strange call from a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered it. It was Karen. "Mr. Thompson, I need to speak with you." "Madam, there's a restraining order preventing you from contacting me." "I'm hanging up now." "Wait, please, I just want to talk for 1 minute. I'm not threatening you, I just want to apologize." Something in her voice made me pause. She sounded tired and defeated, nothing like the angry woman who had confronted me weeks ago. "You can apologize through your lawyer to my lawyer." "I know, I will. But I wanted you to hear it from me directly. I've been under a lot of stress and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. You were just doing your job and I made it into something it never should have been. I'm sorry." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because tomorrow I'm going to lose the recall vote and probably my position on the board. And maybe I deserve that. But before it happens, I wanted you to know that I know I was wrong. I let the power go to my head and I hurt a lot of people in the process. I'm sorry for that." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up. Part of me was suspicious that this was some kind of trick, but part of me felt something like pity. "I appreciate you saying that. I hope you get the help you need," she laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Help? Yeah. Richard convinced me to start seeing a therapist. She thinks I have some control issues stemming from my divorce last year. Apparently I've been trying to control my environment because I couldn't control my personal life. Who knew? I'm sorry about your divorce. Don't be. It was my fault too. I drove him away with the same behavior I showed you. Always needing things to be perfect. Always needing to be in charge, never willing to compromise. Some people never learn." She paused. "Anyway, I've said what I needed to say. I won't bother you again." "Good luck with your business, Mr. Thompson." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. I called Patricia and told her about the conversation. She was furious. "Blake, that was a violation of the restraining order." "We could have her arrested for that call. I know. But I don't think I want to pursue it." She sounded like someone who's already hit rock bottom. "I don't need to kick her while she's down." "That's generous of you, considering what she put you through, but it's your call." The next day, the recall vote took place at the Ridgemont Hills Community Center. I didn't attend, but several of my clients texted me updates throughout the evening. The vote was overwhelming. 68% of residents voted to remove Karen from the HOA board. She didn't attend the meeting or contest the results. A week later, I received a formal letter from Richard Sterling's office. Karen was dropping all complaints against me and agreeing not to pursue any further action. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue additional damages beyond what the court had already ordered. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was closure. Life slowly returned to normal. March brought more snow, and I stayed busy with my plowing routes. Ridgemont Hills elected a new HOA president, a retired engineer named Michael Foster, who immediately reached out to contractors working in the neighborhood to establish better communication. He apologized for Karen's behavior and assured me I was always welcome to work in the community. In April, I ran into Karen at a coffee shop in downtown Boulder. She was sitting alone, reading a book. I almost walked past without saying anything, but something made me stop. "How are you doing?" She looked up, and I saw a genuine surprise on her face. "Mr. Thompson, I'm surprised you're speaking to me." "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises. Are you doing okay?" "I'm surviving. I sold my house in Ridgemont Hills. Too many memories, too much judgment. I'm living in a condo in Louisville now. No HOA, thankfully." She smiled slightly. "I'm still seeing that therapist. She's helping me figure out why I turned into such a monster." "You weren't a monster. You just made some bad choices." "That's generous of you to say, especially after everything I put you through. For what it's worth, I'm truly sorry. I cost you time, money, and stress, all because I couldn't handle my own issues." "Apology accepted. I hope things get better for you." She nodded, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." I left the coffee shop feeling lighter somehow. The situation with Karen had been one of the most stressful experiences of my professional life. But it had also taught me some valuable lessons about standing up for myself, about the importance of documentation and legal protection, and about the complexity of human behavior. My business continued to grow. The publicity from the case had actually helped in an unexpected way. People appreciated that I had stood my ground against unreasonable HOA demands, and several other contractors reached out to share their own HOA horror stories. There was even talk of forming a trade association to help contractors deal with overreaching HOAs. Summer arrived, and with it came the landscaping season. I expanded my services to include lawn care and found myself busier than ever. Ridgemont Hills remained one of my best neighborhoods, and several residents told me they had specifically chosen to live there after hearing that the community had dealt with its HOA problems. In June, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Karen, handwritten on nice stationery. She wrote that she was moving to Oregon to be closer to her sister and to start fresh somewhere new. She thanked me for my kindness at the coffee shop and said it had given her hope that she could rebuild her life. She enclosed a check for $5,000, which she said was to compensate me for the business I had lost during our conflict. I deposited the check and used the money to upgrade some of my equipment. Every time I used the new snowblower I bought with that money, I thought about the strange journey that had led to its purchase. Life had a funny way of working out sometimes. By the time winter rolled around again, the whole incident felt like ancient history. I had new clients, new equipment, and new challenges to face. When the first big snowstorm of the season hit in November, I started my Ridgemont Hills route at 6:30 in the morning, just like I always had. No one complained. No one threatened to call the police. It was just another day of honest work in a neighborhood that had finally found peace. The experience had changed me in subtle ways. I was more careful about documentation, more aware of my legal rights, and more willing to stand up for myself when confronted with unreasonable demands. But I had also learned something about compassion and forgiveness. Karen had made my life hell for several weeks, but she had also been suffering in ways I hadn't understood at the time. Her apology and eventual attempt at restitution didn't erase what she had done, but it did remind me that people were capable of growth and change. As I drove through the snow-covered streets of Ridgemont Hills that November morning, watching the sun rise over the Flatirons, I felt grateful for the life I had built. Running a small business was hard work, and dealing with difficult people was an inevitable part of it. But it was my work, done on my terms, and no HOA Karen was going to take that away from me. The plow blade scraped against concrete, clearing paths for families to start their day. Essential services, the judge had called it, and she was right. What I did mattered, even if it was just making it possible for people to get to work, to get to school, to live their lives without being trapped by weather. It wasn't glamorous, but it was important. That winter was one of the snowiest on record, and I worked harder than I ever had before. But when spring finally arrived and I could take a breath, I looked back on the previous year with something like pride. I had faced down an unjust challenge, stood up for my rights, and come out the other side stronger. My business was thriving, my reputation was solid, and I had learned valuable lessons about the importance of documentation, legal protection, and knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. The Ridgemont Hills HOA, under its new leadership, became one of the most contractor-friendly communities in Boulder. They established clear guidelines for service providers, created a system for handling complaints that was fair and transparent, and worked to build positive relationships with the businesses that served their residents. It became a model that other HOAs in the area started to emulate. I never saw Karen again after that day in the coffee shop. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had found work in Portland and was doing better. I hoped that was true. Despite everything, I didn't wish her ill. She had been a person in pain who had lashed out in destructive ways, but she had also taken responsibility and tried to make amends. That took courage. Looking back now, I can see how the whole situation could have gone differently at multiple points. If I had compromised and agreed to start work later, maybe it would have avoided all the conflict. But it also would have meant abandoning my other clients who needed early service, and it would have set a precedent that HOAs could override municipal law and dictate how licensed contractors operated. Sometimes standing your ground is the right choice, even when it's the harder one. The legal system had worked the way it was supposed to. Judge Morrison had seen through Karen's attempts to portray herself as a victim and had recognized the harassment for what it was. The restraining order had been appropriate, and the consequences for violating it had been fair. It wasn't a perfect system, but it had delivered justice in the end. My lawyer, Patricia, became a good friend through the experience. She had stood by me when things got tough and had fought hard to protect my rights and my business. We still grab coffee occasionally, and she tells me I'm her favorite client because I actually document everything and follow her advice. I tell her that's only because she scared me straight during that first phone call about Karen's lawsuit threat. The business continues to grow. I hired my first employee last summer, a young guy named Marcus, who's eager to learn the trade. I'm teaching him not just about plowing and landscaping, but about customer service, documentation, and standing up for yourself when necessary. I tell him the story of HOA Karen as a cautionary tale about the importance of knowing your rights and protecting your business. As I write this, it's early December, and we're expecting the first major snowstorm of the season tonight. My truck is serviced and ready, my contracts are signed and filed properly, and my insurance is up to date. I'll start my Ridgemont Hills route at 6:30 tomorrow morning, just like always. The sound of my plow scraping against concrete will wake some early risers, but it will also clear the paths they need to live their lives. That's what essential services means. It means being there when people need you, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's early, even when someone complains. It means doing the work that keeps communities functioning, one driveway at a time. And no HOA Karen, no matter how angry or unreasonable, is going to stop me from doing that work. The whole experience taught me that small business ownership requires not just hard work and skill, but also the courage to stand up for yourself when challenged. It taught me the value of good legal counsel and proper documentation. It taught me that people are complicated, and that even those who hurt us are often fighting battles we know nothing about. and it taught me that sometimes the right thing to do is to show mercy and compassion, even to those who have wronged us. The snow is starting to fall now, light flakes drifting past my window. Tomorrow will be a long day of plowing, but I'm ready for it. This is my work, my calling, my contribution to the community, and I'll keep doing it, one snowstorm at a time, for as long as I'm able. That's what it means to provide essential services. That's what it means to be Blake Thompson, professional snow removal contractor, survivor of HOA drama, and small business owner who refused to back down when faced with an unjust challenge. The story of Karen and the snowplow became something of a legend in Boulder's contractor community. Other business owners would reference it when dealing with difficult clients or overreaching HOAs. It became a reminder that standing up for your rights matters, that documentation is crucial, and that sometimes you have to fight for the right to do your job properly. But it also became a reminder that grace and forgiveness have their place, even in business disputes. As winter settles in over Colorado, I'm grateful for the lessons learned, the battles won, and the peace that followed. The snow will fall, the plow will clear it, and life will go on. That's the way it should be, the way it always has been, and the way it will continue to be. One snowstorm at a time, one driveway at a time, one satisfied customer at a time. This is my life, my business, my story, and I wouldn't change it for anything.